nets. We're on the third one now. It looks like we're gonna have some luck on this one, huh?
I think so, yeah. This is set over a spring, and the females will tend to move into the spring to hold until the water temperature of the lake is right.
Mm-hmm.
So
these are called trap nets.
That's
that
correct.
We're looking
yeah.
at here, huh?
They have a trap front and a round back, and the lead is set from the shoreline out to the trap.
Okay.
We're gonna pull these.
Looks like we're gonna see. Yeah, there's some action there. Okay. Now,
Okay.
and who's helping us here in this boat over here?
There's Steve Kruger at the front, and he's the hatchery manager, and then we have Tom Blissman, who's a resource technician at the hatchery, and then Rob Hilseback,
Ah, okay.
and he's a biologist.
Okay. Yeah, we'd like to
Go
see
ahead.
that fish. Oh my goodness.
The reason
Now, if we could get a little closer, oh yeah.
The reason we have so many fish in this net is because the males sense the females and they move in and surround the female, hoping to spawn with her. So we have probably 3 or 4 males and a single female.
I see. Okay, so they're fighting over her, huh?
That's correct.
Now, spawning here, do you have successful spawns in Spring Lake?
We've never had successful natural recruitment in Spring Lake that we're aware of. Musky have a very, very particular set of circumstances that they need to spawn, and we can't do that here.
So these muskies all have to be stocked in here,
That's
spawned
correct.
elsewhere, and stocked in here. Huh?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're sort of an exotic trophy fish here.
Okay, let's take a look at one of these. Okay, now that's a muskie, isn't it, Wayne?
Yes, that's musky.
Yeah. Can you tell by looking whether that's a male or a female?
Nope, I'd imagine it's probably a male, but
A little
female,
female,
Steve
huh? When you
says.
say little, how little are we talking about?
Oh, that particular fish is probably about 35, 36 inches.
And so that's a 3-foot muskie's little, huh?
Well, according to the great realm of musky fishing, 50-inch muskies are what most fishermen are after.
I see. Okay.
But it's a magic figure that is kind of mythical, you know.
Wayne, we've crossed the lake, and I think you said it's deeper on this side, huh? So usually
Yes.
there's more fish over here.
Well, the females tend to come to this side to spawn in these rocks here. So, yeah.
Yeah. It looks like we're pulling something in there now. That if we can get a little closer, maybe we can
Sure.
see what we got there. Oh, look at the mouth. Look at the mouth on her. Now that's a female. Does that look like a female there?
Yes,
maybe?
it does.
Oh boy. What's that smaller one they were putting in?
It's a channel catfish.
Channel catfish?
Yes.
What will you do with the channel catfish?
Well, they'll probably throw him back.
Oh, I see. Okay. You just dump everything in there and decide later on what you'll do, huh?
Well, yeah, we sort the fish that we need in the hatchery, and then of course everything else goes right back. The muskie that we're spawning actually will be back swimming in this lake probably later today or tomorrow.
No kidding.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's a short trip for them. We're only about a mile from the hatchery, so it's a very convenient source of brood fish.
Yeah. Oh, now Wayne, that looks like a net full, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was a pretty good net. Some of these nets at times we've had 20, 25 fish in. Not the smaller nets, but you'll see some bigger nets that we fish as well. And those sometimes with a good fishing day, they'll have 20, 25 fish in them.
And again, these they sometimes get caught in there. They get caught in the net a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Their teeth mesh, and sometimes they're a little difficult to get shaken out.
Okay, Wayne, we're almost through with the nets for the day, but kind of surprised us, didn't we? Let's look at that.
Look at the draw. There's one big female in there, and she has lots of little males with her. Littler males that are ready to fertilize their eggs.
That's a handful, isn't it? These guys have to be strong too, don't they?
Yeah.
That is a lot of fish.
It's a workout. There are no weak commercial fishermen, I don't think. Yeah, that was a very good net.
they weigh. Now, and we're about halfway through with the nest, but now what you have to do is offload these muskies that you've got here. Now, that's that's a big fish there, isn't it?
Yep, it's a female.
Yeah. And these are unloaded by hand into the tank on the truck, and that frees up your space. So when you go back out, you've got enough tank space to bring some more fish in.
That's correct.
Look at those. Boy, those things are heavy.
Some of these bigger females weigh 20 to 25 pounds, and they'll produce about a liter of eggs or so.
Now this is the process before we go to the hatchery. We actually will then you say that the female, some of these female are flowing eggs, and what we'll get to see at the hatchery is actually the way I guess they take the eggs from the flowing females and start the spawning process. So that's what we're going to do next.
That's correct.
Well, listen, thanks so much for taking us out.
Well, you're more than
Beautiful
welcome.
morning. Thank you.
Yep.
And everybody on your crew.
It's a good fishing day.
Well, Steve Kruger, we have brought the fish in from the lake. We got them off the truck. They're in a holding tank now. In fact, there's some splashing going on there. The first thing you want to do is you've isolated the males,
Correct.
and you want to take some of the sperm from the males.
Right, so we want to take the semen out of individual males, and we collect it in test tubes, then we put it on ice, and then once we get enough semen for the females that we're going to spawn, then we bring it over, and then we'll actually add the milk onto the eggs, fertilize the eggs, and voila, we have baby muskie.
So what's going on over here now?
So what's happening right now is David Parrish has a male northern muskie in his hands, and he's kind of gently squeezing on the bottom of the fish, the ventral part of the fish, and then Mark Sardi has got an aspirator, and he's actually kind of suctioning that milk, the semen, into a test tube. And then once they'll probably get somewhere between 2 and 3 milliliters, which is millions and millions of individual semen cells. And then we'll take that and we'll put it on ice to keep it cool until we need it.
Okay, and then this will, while we're viewing this today, we get a chance to see how you actually mix the milk with the eggs.
Exactly.
But is there some sort of special environment that you do this in, or is this pretty simply done?
The most important thing right now when we're taking the milk from the male is to make sure that it's kept neat, that there's no water contamination, because right now the individual cells are just sitting there, they're doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And even when we pour them onto the eggs, when the eggs don't have any water, they're just doing nothing. But as soon as you add water to that mixture, then all of a sudden those cells start swimming like crazy, trying to find that little tiny, it's called a micropyle in the egg, that they swim into in order to fertilize the egg. So right now it's just sitting there waiting to find an egg to fertilize. And then we'll show you how to do that in just a moment.
Okay, and now he's going to take that, and I guess he's going to put it on ice.
Correct. We just try to keep it cool. We don't want it to warm up too much. Right now the temperature of the fish is we're keeping these fish at about 54 degrees, which is slightly above what the lake temperature is. We just want to keep it about that same temperature if we can. I don't want it to warm up. So we'll just keep it on ice for a little while. A little bit later on, we'll take a sample of the semen, put it on a microscope slide, and then check it to make sure that it's not already active and swimming around. Because once we add water to this, those cells only have about a minute to find an egg and fertilize it. And if you don't get it within a minute, they're going to run out of energy, and they don't have the energy to actually penetrate the egg, fertilize it, and then, actually fertilize the egg. That's pretty cool, actually. It's a neat process. It really is.
Okay, Steve, now one of the females we just brought in from the lake, you say is flowing eggs, and we're taking a look at her right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, how do you know she's flowing eggs?
Well, when we trap netted her and we brought her into the boat, actually eggs were coming out of the vent in her belly when we did that. So we know that she's ready to spawn, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to capture her now in this crib. We try to do it as gently as possible, and then these are such powerful fish that we have to load her into this harness in order for Dave to keep a hold of her. This is really a 3-man operation. One to hold the fish, one to hold the tail, and another person, sometimes holds the head, and then Dave is going to push on the vent or her belly in order to get all the eggs out of her.
Okay.
And we hope to get somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 2 liters of eggs, which will amount to maybe 80,000 eggs in her.
Now you say this is such a powerful fish. Once they pull her out of the water, her true weight is going to be felt. What do you think that fish would weigh?
She's probably weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 pounds. And we'll actually weigh her when we're done, and then we can kind of back calculate by adding the weight of the eggs and know how much she weighed, before she actually spawned.
Okay, so she goes from there into a harness, and that's how they'll be able to hold her. Huh?
And the key to this whole process is keeping her as dry as possible, so there's no water on the eggs. We want to collect the eggs so they're nice and dry. If there's water on the eggs, that actually the eggs start to deteriorate, and then it'll also fertilize the eggs earlier than we want.
Okay. Wow. Boy, now, what are we seeing come out there?
Okay,
first?
they just have the vent on the female, and Dave's just gently pushing on her abdomen, and he's collecting. Brenda's holding the bowl, and we're collecting eggs.
And those are eggs that are coming out there, huh?
Exactly.
And they have a very yellow color.
Most of the time, they're quite yellow.
Oh, darn. Now, see his right hand. He's pushing. He really takes some strength to push that down toward the.
It's amazing the muscular strength in those fish. There's two belly muscles there, and it takes quite a bit of strength to push those eggs out. Sometimes they flow a little more easily than you're seeing right now, but it takes a lot of strength.
Yeah. And I think you might have said how many eggs you might get, but I forgot. How many eggs are we talking
get
about?
a fish this size, we could easily get 2 liters of eggs, and that's probably going to be in the neighborhood of 75 to 85,000 eggs.
Oh my goodness. Now she's not fighting, or if she is, we're not seeing it. Is this something that kind of puts them into a daze or something?
Well, I mean, Dave's got a hold of her pretty good, and Tom's up there holding the head, and Dave's holding the head. So it's they're trying to keep her as inactive as possible for both Dave's sake that's spawning her and the fish's sake.
How does he know when he's got it all?
Well, actually, you can see how kind of not poochy the belly is. When all the eggs are out of her, that will kind of sink in, and you can tell that all the eggs are gone. And then when he's pushing and no eggs are coming out.
And when you said earlier you could see that she was flowing eggs, you could tell by just how poochy her stomach was.
That and the fact that just by picking her up, eggs were coming out her vent.
Oh my goodness, she was really ready to go.
She was definitely ready to spawn in the lake. And we're happy it's nice to have fish that come in flowing rather than for us to have to inject a hormone in order to make them ovulate. Well, the quality of the egg that we get is much better when that happens. So this year we've been very fortunate. All the females, have either come in right off the boat, or once we bring them in here, they hang around here for a couple of days and then they start flowing.
And I noticed too, you said that sometimes you'll bring females in that you have netted and brought. How long would you ordinarily maybe have to hold them before they're ready?
Oh, typically somewhere in the neighborhood of, we hope to be able to get them out within 5 days. So say 7 days, 8 days.
My goodness, she's got a lot. She needs a lot to go, doesn't she?
They're flowing pretty good right now. What takes us 5 minutes to do here would take her a lot less time in the lake.
Oh, is that right? And she'd do it on her own. She wouldn't have to be
She'd pair
massaged.
up with another male, and then it would happen much quicker. It's a nice looking eggs right there. And there's so many of them. What we'll do then in a little one Dave's done is we'll separate those into 2 bowls, and then you saw the spawning. No, you go ahead and keep doing it. What you're doing. And then when it's all done, we'll separate them into 2 bowls, and then we've got the milk in the test tubes. Add the milk. She good?
She's done. Excellent. Steve, as we look at the male muskies now in the tank, we're going to see how you actually add the milk to the eggs. Is that right? Sir. You've split the eggs in half, and you've got them in 2 bowls.
Right. This is the female that Dave just spawned. Because there's so many eggs, we separated it so we have a thinner layer of eggs, and then Rod and Brenda each have 3 vials of the milk that we just took a few moments ago. It's been on ice, so they're going to go ahead and add it neat. So right now there's no water on the eggs, there's no water on the milk. They add the milk, stir it up a little bit. Rod just rinsed out the vials. Brenda's doing the same. Okay, now they're ready to add water to this. As soon as the water hits that semen, all those millions of semen cells in there, they start swimming like crazy, trying to find an egg to fertilize. Then we're just very gently kind of stirring that up. We want to get that semen mixed up very well with all of those eggs so that we have good contact between the milk and the egg. You can actually add a touch more water to that if you would.
A little more water. Okay, and plus then, this is from many males, so what you've got is a homogeneous bunch of sperm with the eggs from one female. So you
Exactly.
don't just get the same genetic turnout, I guess.
That's right, exactly. There were 3 males per female here, so we try to maximize the genetic variability in this spawn.
Now, how long will this have to sit like this before there's actually some activity?
We'll leave it like this for exactly. We'll leave it like this for about 2 minutes, and by then the milk that has fertilized the eggs, I mean the whole fertilization process is done in about 2 minutes. And then what we'll do is we'll go set it out of the way so that these males don't knock the eggs out of the bowls.
Yeah.
And then we'll just rinse the eggs once in about 5 minutes. They'll stay in this water for about an hour while they water harden. They absorb water, and once they do that, after about an hour, they're a little more durable. And then we'll actually measure them in a graduated cylinder so we know exactly how many milliliters of eggs that we have. And then we'll move them into incubation. And they'll be in incubation at 54 degrees. That's the temperature of the water that we're using, for somewhere around 10, maybe 12 days. And then from there, we move them to some baskets out in the star tank room. It takes them about another 10 days to swim up. They use up their yolk sac that every fish has when it first hatches. And then after that, then we're ready to start feeding them.
And now for the males and the females that we've seen in here today who've contributed their precious wherewithal here, how long before they get turned back into the lake or back into the wild?
We've had these guys for 2 days. We're going to be done spawning. We'll have taken somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 million eggs after this afternoon. And all these are going to go back to the lake this afternoon. A good number of them are going to go back to the lake this afternoon. So we'll have held these fish anywhere from 5 to 3 days.
Steve, we left the spawning room and we came over to the incubation room.
Yes, sir.
And the eggs we're looking at here are very recent, aren't they?
Most of these were taken either the day before yesterday or yesterday. These were taken yesterday. And what you're looking at is every female is kept individually in a hatching jar. So after those eggs that we just spawned, after they water harden, which takes about an hour, then we bring them into incubation. We would measure them in a graduated cylinder so that we know, like in this case, there was 800 mils of eggs taken from that female. Then we go ahead and put them in the incubation jar, and they're going to stay. This is 54-degree water. This is our well water. And they're going to stay in this jar for approximately 10, as many as 11 days, and then they'll go ahead and hatch. And when they hatch, then we'll go ahead and take those fry, and we'll move them to another room, put them in a basket so that we can keep track of exactly what happens with the spawn from that female.
Now I noticed that some of these eggs look different than others of these eggs. And
Right.
what's going on
The
there?
eggs that are the white color, those are eggs that are dead. And what happens is, when they turn white because the yolk inside the egg actually ruptures, and then the salt that's inside that yolk gets out into the water, so that's why they turn white like that. The rest of them, not all of those are going to be viable or fertilized eggs. Maybe anywhere from, we'll just say 25 all the way up to maybe 80% will be good eggs. We'll know that in about a week.
Yeah. And of course out in nature, they don't all survive either.
No, all you need is 2 to survive in nature to make, sustain the population. We're going to have much higher viability or survival rate in the hatchery than they are out in the lake. Much higher.
Steve, just to illustrate what will happen to the musky eggs that we're seeing in incubation, we're looking at northern pike now, and you spawned those a little earlier in the season. So these are just a little bit older than your muskies would be, right?
We took these actually the week before we started with the musky this week. So these were spawned on the 9th and the 10th.
Man, they almost look lifeless, so you have to shake the screen a little bit to get them to move around.
Once the egg hatches and once we get a fry with the northern pike, what's cool about the northern pike is we bring them into these baskets after they hatch. And they actually have an adhesive gland on their head. You can see where they're sticking to the sides of the basket.
Yeah,
we'll put little flappers in here, little screens in here, and they'll go ahead and gather on that. And that's what they would do out in the wild. They would be caught on some vegetation, so they kind of attach to that. And while what they're doing actually is just kind of sitting there motionless, they still have a yolk sac on them. If you can see, there's still a little tiny yolk sac on them. So they're really still continuing to develop for another 10 days before they're ready to start feeding on zooplankton or rotifers, or in our case, on a prepared diet.
So these you're not feeding them yet, they're still using their yolk sac.
Yep.
And then when they use that up, then you'll start to feed
Exactly.
them.
They're still using their yolk as their energy source right now.
Okay. Now, these little guys, and these are very similar to muskies. That's
Very
why
much. They're
I
a
wanted
cousin to the muskie.
Yeah, okay. these little guys will be at this stage for how long?
Well, they're gonna, you see how big they are now? They're about, a quarter of an inch. We'll have these fish up to 8 inches by the 1st of July. And we'll produce somewhere in the neighborhood of 11 to 13,000 8-inch fish. And they get stocked from northern Illinois all the way down to about central Illinois. The muskie then is very similar. They'll start at about this size and will produce around 20,000 10 to 11 inch fish, and we'll have them ready to go somewhere between middle to late August.
Now, that means that the survival rate of these guys, or at least your ability to handle all those fish, is not all that great, because, I mean, we're talking, you only have tens and tens and tens of thousands of fry here.
Actually,
what happens to them all?
That's a good question. And a lot of the northern pike, what we'll do is we're already going to we'll start about 40,000 northern pike on feed. The rest of these fry will actually get stocked into the Illinois River. Wayne Herman, the district biologist that you were working with this morning, likes to stock northern pike into Illinois, trying to establish a population. So any extra fry will go out into the river, and they will start about 40,000. We have very good survival of northern pike on feed. And what we'll do is we start a lot more than we need, and then eventually we'll trade them. Iowa likes some fish, so we'll trade them to Iowa, because what we have is a cooperative effort on states in the Midwest that they don't get enough pike, we don't sometimes get enough muskie, so we'll help them with pike, they help us with muskie. So we'll give them around 25,000, and then we stock some fish short. We may stock them at 3 or 4 or 6 inches into some lakes that can use it. And then we'll end up at the end, basically, we'll have that 11 to 13,000 8-inch fish available for stocking.
You know, this has been really fascinating for us, because you put out your nets and you only started capturing these muskies less than a week ago.
Exactly.
And now you've finished capturing them, you're going to take up your nets, you've got the eggs, you've got the fertilization process going, and now here we are. It's amazing how quickly it all happens.
And it's lucky for us that it does happen quickly, because we're always under a time constraint with the tank space and the water, and we need to keep things moving along, because first we did the northerns, then we bring in the muskie, and then we'll bring in smallmouth, and then we'll bring in largemouth, and in the mix we'll have walleye, striped bass hybrids. So there's one thing after another with tank space in this room. And it's the same thing with all the cold water fish that we have here. We get them out, and once we get them out, that frees up water and space to start spawning the smallmouth and the largemouth. So it's a ripple effect. If one thing slows down, it really backs up everything else that we do here.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for taking the day. And I'll tell you what, and not only you, the DNR crew that took us out in the boats and everything, your whole crew and your colleagues have been great. Thank you.
Well, we're successful because of the dedication and the hard work and the knowledge of the staff that works here. It's a great bunch of people to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back in midwinter, when we were here doing a story on these rainbow trout, they weren't much bigger then than the northern pike that you just saw a moment ago. These guys will be moved out next week outside, and then in May they'll be shipped up to Lake Michigan for the fishery up there, all to make room for other species to grow here. With another Illinois story near Manitou, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.